Well, there are two contributors to the insecurity in the Southeast. There is the political contributor, and then there is the economic contributor. First, the economic contributor is because you have a lot of unemployed young people who don't know where their next meal is coming from, who have gone to school, did all they were asked to do, came out with good grades, no job. They've tried to start their businesses, government taxed them to death. They've tried to learn a trade, no, that it's not working. And I'm not making excuses for criminals, but I'm just saying that when you have a group of young people in their prime who don't have meaningful work to do, then the old adage comes in handy that the idle mind is a devil's workshop. So you have to take out the economic contributor to the insecurity for you to make meaningful impact. But there is also the political motivator, right? Because the South is rightly feels marginalized in Nigeria. Anybody who has looked at Nigeria, its history, will know that the Southeasterners have a legitimate claim to say that they have not been fairly treated by Nigeria. And then, because of that, one person now, who has articulated these issues may not have done so in the best of manners, may have been rabid in his comments, may have, been overzealous, may have been, it's clear that this writer or this speaker here today does not agree with him. For instance, I have had running battles with them. For instance, I have written a lot of articles denouncing their mode of expressing their ill feelings with Nigeria. But for some reason, this person controls a huge number of sympathy or attention from the people, including the young people. And so because of his continued incarceration, especially as relating to that, they seem to, in the manner he was tried, whether you were talking about his extraordinary rendition, or whether you're talking about his kidnapping, or whether you're talking about disobedience of court orders, that it seems now that the optics have not been handled so well by the Nigerian state, that it now appears that he's no longer being prosecuted, but rather being persecuted. And in such instances, when you have a bunch of young people who are left without jobs, and then you have the motivation in terms of political ill feeling towards the Nigerian state, then that could begin to lay the groundwork for why young people are recruited and brainwashed into picking up arms against the Nigerian state. And where these people are recruited and brainwashed, sometimes they're not even fighting for the said agitation. Sometimes they just dovetail into pure criminality, into kidnapping, into violence, because once you pick up arms, you now see that there is more to it that you can gain from the arms. So instead of talking about the agitation, you're now talking about, if I kidnap this person, I'll make more money. And the average Southeasterner wants to make more money. And before this thing started, I wrote an article and I warned Nigerians, and I did warn the Southeast about what I call the commercialization of violence in the Southeast. What we're experiencing today is the commercialization of violence in the Southeast, because the Southeasterners tend to be mercantilistic in nature, they tend to be commercial in nature, and so whatever they hold, whether you're talking about agitation, they tend to commercialize it. So what we have is a commercialized version of agitation that has led to widespread insecurity. So yes, I believe that as part of the efforts to douse the insecurity, or attempts to solve some of the insecurity, that you have to negotiate some of these things. And the release of Nnamdi Kanu under negotiated terms, I'm not asking for a unilateral release or something. There must be some negotiated terms. He must agree to some of the terms Nigerian state will be willing to ask him. And then Nigerian state will also be willing to drop some of the charges. And when they are able to negotiate and come to a compromise, and then both parties can decide to work together for the interest of peace. I believe that the Nigerian state, working hand in hand with Nnamdi Kanu, can reduce drastically the level of insecurity we see in the Southeast. But first, the both parties must agree to dialogue, and both parties must agree to talk. And if the federal government is holding a stance that is averse to dialogue and to this thing, then people who are calling for the release of Nnamdi Kanu as one of the ways to solve, it will not solve all the problems, so as one of the ways to solve the problems, may be given another, you have to consider their views more critically and not wave them off with the wave of hand.